Parashat Vayakhel begins with teaching us about Shabbat. And the parasha predominantly has to do with the construction of the Mishkan, which we'll speak about. And then we've been speaking about the Mishkan for the past couple of weeks, the construction of the actual tabernacle, the temple, the portable temple, portable sanctuary that they had in the desert, all of the vessels that was inside of it, all of the clothing of the Kohanim that they would wear inside as they were doing the service. So the parasha is going to speak about that. But at the very beginning, what it tells us is as follows. Speak to the Jewish people. You can do work for 6 days, but that seventh day, it's a holy day. It's a day of rest. Not to do any work. Someone does work on it on that day, they'll be executed, right? And so it's something that's severe not to work on that day. It's a day of rest. And so what our sages point out is there's a juxtaposition, meaning there's two sections, two laws, two ideas that are taught next to each other, which is very important. It says, it's about to tell us about the construction of the Mishkan, and as it's teaching us the laws of how to build the Mishkan, how to construct the Mishkan and everything that's entailed, it says, do that for 6 days of the week, but don't do that on Saturday, don't do it on Shabbat, and that's a day of rest. And our sages learn from here that by definition, the types of work that we should refrain from doing on Shabbat are the types of work that were involved in the construction of the Mishkan, because by definition it's saying, hey, all of this that you're doing for the construction of the tabernacle, don't do it on Shabbat, essentially. So when we study the laws of Shabbat, there's this concept called the melacha b'mishkan. What was the action that was done in the Mishkan that would make it prohibited for us to do on Shabbat? And everything has to fall under some sort of a category. There are 39 main categories of prohibited work on Shabbat called melacha, and one of them is kindling fire. The line says, "Lo teva'aru esh b'chol mashotechem," don't start a fire. That was necessary as part of the process, but there was other things, and as there has to be some sort of a source. Now, obviously, technology changes, and there are things like, for example, they didn't have electricity back then, as an example. So, or throughout history, there's many advancements, and there was no printers back then, right? So, is printing the same thing? They would write, or would they print? There's all of these types of questions, and that's where you have Talmudic analysis, and you have commentaries from all of the different sages of different generations, and they had to do their analysis. But from its source, from the Torah, there has to be these 39 levels of melacha, of actions that were involved in the construction of the Mishkan that make up the prohibited actions of Shabbat. So we learned that from this connection. The next part of the parasha is, it's like essentially that this is like a recap, or it's telling us everything that they had to do, and then they actually did it. So it calls out all of the materials that needed to be donated, all of the precious metals, the gold, the silver, the copper. It tells us all of the precious stones that they had to collect, all of the items and all of the vessels that are inside the Mishkan. It goes through all of this list, the parasha, and they have to do the construction. There was a project manager, if you will. There was someone who was put in charge of this project. His name was Bezalel. Bezalel was tasked with overseeing everything. He was very skilled, he was very talented, and he was filled with what the Torah calls a ruach Elohim, a spirit of God, a godly spirit. And so with that godly spirit, he had this responsibility to take everyone's skills and to get volunteers, to get people to contribute, to get all sorts of people. It wasn't just him doing the construction, but he was overseeing it together with another person named Aholiav. So Bezalel and Aholiav were overseeing, they managed the construction, they got the volunteers, they oversaw the project. So this is what the Torah is telling us, that they were the ones doing the work. So Moshe wasn't doing the work. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't doing the work. Bezalel and Aholiav were the main ones doing it, which is going to be important. Something that's very interesting that Torah tells us is that at some point, as they were doing the work, people came to Bezalel and they came to Aholiav, and they basically said, and then they went to Moshe and they said as following: people are bringing so much donations, all of the gold, the silver, the copper, all of the different types of wool that we need, and the dyes. People are bringing too much. and it's more than what we need in order to do this construction. Vaitzav Moshe, so then Moshe said, fine, let's make a law. Vaitzav Moshe made a commandment. And they passed the news, like they passed an edict throughout the camp saying, no more donations. This is probably the first time in a fundraising effort that the fundraisers will close and no longer allow for you to contribute. So the people stopped contributing. It's unbelievable how much people were coming forward to contribute, both financially, both voluntarily, to put their efforts into it. And it came so much to the point that they were collecting too much. And they basically said, okay, enough, we don't need any more. Thank you, everyone. We have enough to cover the construction. The job of Bezalel and Aholiab, as well as the others, was to get volunteers, and the Torah speaks about how there were different people who contributed in different ways. There were people involved with construction, and there were men and women. There were ladies that were involved with some of the weaving. It speaks about how they're involved with creating. There's curtains and tapestries, and there had to be wool and had to be woven, and it says how there was women getting involved with those processes, men and women together. It shows how they actually tried to get as many people involved as possible. It wasn't just a few at the top. This was a major project overseen by Bezalel and Aholiab. Okay, so the Torah then goes through the whole list of everything that they made. They made the curtains that were going around the Mishkan. They made the planks that they had. There was like the walls, partitions. They made the Aron, the different vessels. They had the Aron, which was the ark that the tablets were in. They made a Shulchan, which was a table. We spoke about this in previous weeks. That there was bread on it, there was the showbread on it every week, the menorah, where they would put the fire, the candles, the golden incense altar, that's where they put the spices. We spoke about that as the Mizbeach HaZahav, and the much larger altar, the Mizbeach HaNechoshet, the Kior, which is what they would use to wash their hands and feet, the clothing of the Kohanim, what the Kohanim would wear, the breastplate, all of the stones on it, the golden plate that the Kohen would wear on his forehead, the hats, the apron, the overcoat, all of this stuff that we spoke about that the Kohanim would wear. It goes through that whole list and speaks about the construction and how they would actually get it done. So you could almost think about in the prior Parashat, the Torah is telling us what needs to be constructed, like the description, the specs, if you will. And now in this week, it's like the execution. They're actually building everything. They're putting everything together. There's something that's very nice where the Parashat tells us that they now, after everything was done, they had to have it pass the inspection of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah says, "Vayaviu et Mishkan el Moshe." So they brought everything to show it to Moshe. Moshe, what do you think? Remember, he wasn't involved in the day-to-day. It was Bezalel and Aholiab overseeing the project. So once they were done, they got Bezalel got Moshe to come review it, and Moshe reviewed it, and he was very happy. He saw that they did everything correctly, exactly as prescribed. They followed the correct orders. They did everything correctly, and he was very happy about it. And Moshe gave them a blessing. And Rashi here explains what the blessing was. Everything that you did was something physical, and may it be the will of God that He accepts all of the hard work that you have put together, that He should come now and be a part of this. That God's presence, whatever that means, God's presence and glory should now dwell within the home that you have built, right? So you can do this part, but we want Hashem to be a part of our lives, and we want Him to accept it, right? And so that's part of His prayer to the ones who built it, and really for the Jewish people. So then the Torah tells us that it was in the first of the month of Nisan that the Mishkan was erected. See, the Jewish people left Egypt in the month of Nisan. Actually, the 15th of Nisan is the night of Pesach, of Passover. The 15th of Nisan is, according to our tradition, is the night that we had left Egypt. So the month of Nisan is the month in which we left Egypt, and the Torah actually in Parashat Bo tells us, since we left Egypt in the month of Nisan, that's like the coming of a nation. That's when the Jewish people became a nation. So Nisan is the first month of the year. Now, 12 months later, the following Nisan, so Nisan of the second year, on the first of the month, that's when the Mishkan, this tabernacle, the sanctuary, was erected. The Torah tells us that it was established and erected on the 1st of Nisan of the following year. And the Torah, as I just said, the prayer that Moshe said, that God should dwell amongst your handiwork, everything that you've done, Yiratzon, may it be the will of God, that He accepts it, and He then comes and it becomes part of it. The Torah tells us, there was clouds that came and they covered the Mishkan, and these clouds were the Kavod Adonai, the honor of God. Whatever this means, there was something very clear with clouds showing that God's presence is now dwelling amongst the Bnei Israel and dwelling in this Mishkan, that Hashem had accepted it, and now He's a part of it. This is like His dwelling place, if you will. And we know that Hashem is everywhere, but they had created a home for Him, and Hashem, through the clouds, is showing that He accepts their work and He is part of their Mishkan. And it says, and Moshe couldn't go in that zone area anymore, because now it's no longer a construction zone. Now it's the home of God, and you can't go into any part of the Mishkan whenever you want. There are certain parts that only a Kohen or Aaron would be allowed to go, and Moshe would no longer be allowed to go. So starting from when it was inaugurated, those laws began to apply, saying how now there's order. You can't go whenever you want, wherever you want. There's instructions of who's allowed to go where, and it's all been set in place. And that's really where the Parashat ends, and that's where the book of Shemot ends. Going forward, we're going to read the book of Leviticus, of Vayikra, and that has to do with all of the offerings that's brought in the Mishkan. But we conclude this parasha with the construction and the completion of the construction of the Mishkan, and all of the vessels within it, and all of the clothing that the Kohanim would be wearing within it. And we end in a happy note, because it looks like it's been accepted from Hashem. One other thing I'll mention is that, as we mentioned how the Mishkan was inaugurated on the 1st of Nisan, this week is for us is the first day of Nisan. We're entering the month of Nisan this Thursday, and Nisan is the month of Passover, as I said. So Pesach will be in 2 weeks, on the 15th of Nisan. So it'll be in 2 weeks from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, from the 1st of Nisan, which is coming up this week. So you have the Torah's section that has to do with Rosh Chodesh Nisan, very much has to do with where we are in the calendar today. Also, just as back then Hashem accepted our work, accepted Moshe's prayer, and He dwelled amongst Am Yisrael, Be'ezrat Hashem, may Hashem accept everything that we do, all of our efforts, and may He dwell amongst us and to bless us to have a wonderful year ahead. Shavua Tov, everyone. Have a great week.